And so lab 4, we're going to do something similar, but for our air handler controller, the ASIC3. We're not really going to build graphics for the 8100. I add them to the database just to get you some extra practice with the cloning process. So here in lab 4, creating an air handler graphic. In the picture here, this shows you the air handler duct image where you could have separate supply and return fans. I'm actually going to choose the RTU template here in step 3B. And so with the RTU template, it's going to just be a simpler piece of ductwork. Basically, you don't have the bottom section here. It just has the supply duct, and then you have a return duct here without the bottom section. And that works fine because our air handler points are pretty simple. So step 1, make sure you nav to an air handler such as your air handler on the first floor. So I don't want to be at VAV 102, but instead I want to nav to my first floor air handler, which happens to be air handler 5. Part of that project has this air handler test graphic. We don't really need that. In fact, I don't even think there's anything useful in it. Let me just see. Yeah, so that kind of gives you an idea of what the ductwork looks like, but this is just a test image that we can actually delete it. So nav to your air handler 5 or your first floor air handler, and then do menu, graphics builder, new. And just like before, you can give your graphic a name like my AHU. The graphic template, I'm going to choose RTU template to get that simpler ductwork without the large return fan section. The graphic on filter defaults to AHU and equip. That's fine. I do want to make the graphic a relative graphic that is relativized by tags. And just like before, I'm going to select all of the points. And then make sure you scroll down so you see the components section. And then I'm going to select in the components section all of the points there as well. Again, knowing that I'm going to delete a lot of them, but I have found that deleting components is easier than adding them if I forgot. So give it a name, choose the RTU template. The default settings for the filter and the relative are fine. Choose all the points, choose all the components, click OK. My AHU has been created, click OK. And then now this AHU test image that we don't need, I can show you how to delete that. Just click on the AHU test graphic on the right, and then click on the red delete button. Make sure you delete the AHU test graphic and not the My AHU graphic. So AHU test delete. Are you sure you want to delete AHU test? Yes, I am. Click yes. So now that one's gone. Now click on the My AHU graphic and select Edit to open that graphic for editing. And so just like before, I like to lock the ductwork early on. So that's step 7. Click on the duct image and click lock in the property sidebar. So there's my duct image called group. Click on the unlock icon since it's currently unlocked, and it changes to the locked icon, meaning that it is locked. And then we'll go to the tool sidebar on the right, click on magic buttons, smart label the graphic objects. That lines the components up at the top, and then it shows the smart labels on the left in a vertical layout. So magic buttons underneath tools on the right, smart label the graphic objects, lines everything up. And then just like before, I like to start from the right and then click on the component to see which point is associated with that component, and then either move it to an appropriate location or delete it. And so the fan is actually a little bit odd because I actually have 2 points related to the fan. There's the analog point, which is the fan speed called VFD. And then there's the digital point just called fan. So I'm actually going to I want the fan to spin when the digital output is on. So this component related to the VFD, I'm going to actually delete it. My keyboard, delete key on my keyboard. So here's a duct sensor for the supply air temp. Drag that to the right edge of the duct. The next sensor is for the return air temp. And so I can drag it down here, but I want to insert it into the side of the duct, so I need to spin it. And so there is this, in the properties view, the options list where it says temperature vertical top. If you click on there, you do have an option for temperature horizontal, and that will spin it so that you can insert it into the side of the duct. The next fan is for the remote schedule, so I don't need a fan for the schedule, so delete that one. The next duct sensor is for outside air temp, and so I'm going to just drag it over. I need to move it a little bit further to the left, but I have all these smart labels that are blocking the far left edge of the duct, so I'll just put it slightly to the left and move it over later. The next duct sensor is the mixed air sensor. And so if I had a duct sensor, I could just put it in the mixed air section. But if I had an averaging sensor, I don't use the options, right? That just gives me temperature vertical top, which is the default, temperature horizontal, which spins it, temperature vertical bottom, which lets you insert it from the bottom edge. But another way you can see some options depending on which component it is. Once you've selected it, you click on this variations box with like the 4 rectangles, and then it'll may show you some variations. So one of those is an averaging temp sensor. If you had an averaging sensor, that would make more sense to put there. The next fan is for the high duct static alarm. Don't need that, delete. Got a heating coil for heating, for the heating 2 point. And I do have some options there. Vertical, small vertical, horizontal, small horizontal. And then I also have different variations. So you might want to choose the DX heat variation for heating 2. There's the next one. Oops. DX heat. Those are kind of snapping into my grid a little weird. They didn't used to do that. Oh, there we go. Maybe come in from the bottom edge rather than the top.
We're selecting DX heat for both of them?
Yeah. So then it'll be bright red when it's on and not bright red when it's off. And then the next fan I do want, that's actually the one that is associated with the binary output for the fan. So I'll pull that here so it pulls across the coils. There's my Economizer dampers. So I'll put those to the left for now, and I'll drag them further to the left once I get these smart labels out of the way. There is a pressure sensor where there's Dwyer's and Siemens options there. Oh, actually, that's just Dwyer. Are there variations? I always use the Dwyer one. Yeah. So you can drag that out over here. Then this is cooling 2. So you might want to choose the variation for DX cooling. And then cooling 1, I might also choose the variation for DX cool. Make a little note there and ask them about that snap. That's a little weird. I don't think it used to do that. Let's see. DX, cool, and heat images don't snap into duct from the top. Okay, so now I have all my components in the right spot, and I deleted the ones that I don't need.
Something happened to my one heating one for some odd reason. I don't know where the heck that ended up. Oh, there you go. It's on the bottom.
Let's see.
Yeah, I got it.
You found it?
Yeah, I don't know how.
Good deal.
There.
So once you get all of your components in place, then you can smart label the graphic objects again. And you get a little more overlap here because there's just more components. And so the first thing I like to do is delete these ones on the left that I didn't choose components for. In fact, except the one for VFD, because we might want to show the VFD value as well. So I can just, before I delete, move VFD out of the way, maybe resize it to make it smaller, put it up near the fan. The rest of these smart labels on the left I don't need. So after I move the VFD point out, I'll just draw that little narrow strip to highlight those, hit the delete key on my keyboard, and they go away. And then I can resize and reposition these various components. And so if I pick all of those, I don't think it matters, but I prefer when I'm doing the highlight to not have components selected. So if you do see a component selected, you can hold Shift or Control, or it looks like Control, to deselect. And then I can resize and make them small. Return Air Temp, I can resize, make it small. And then now that I've moved these things out of the way on the left, now I can slide my outside air sensor out to the edge and move my dampers out to the edge. And then sometimes I just stack my heating 1 and heating 2 and cooling 1 and cooling 2. That kind of gets most of the overlapping away. VFD and the fan, and then maybe supply air temp and duct static down here, something like that. Actually, you probably could put even something like that. So the exact positioning is not that important, but not overlapping makes it easier to read them. So get your components in places that look right. Whoops. I think I clicked my mouse there. Get your components in places that you like. Smart label the graphic objects, resize and reposition. And we're ready to add an overview box. So we're going to go, now that we have the magic buttons menu still visible, click overview box and new. And then we can choose our points. We don't need it to be a mini group. It says select all the temperatures, set points, and the duct static point. So that means cooling SP, duct static SP is the set point, heating SP is a set point, mixed, outside, return, and supply are all temps. So that should be 8 points altogether. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. Click apply. You can give your overview box a new name, such as inputs and set points. You could change the icon. I'll change it here just to show you that there are some different icons. I don't know that it necessarily told you to do that here. But since this is an air handler, I could choose the icon as AHU. I don't think there's a VAV icon, but there is an AHU icon. And then just like before, I could change the names for my points and the order to change the order in which they appear. But I'm just going to leave the default. Click apply.
Did you have VFD selected? That was probably the only one that I'm. No. No. It's just the ones that are end in SP. Those are my set points, and then the inputs, which is the duct static input, and then the 4 temperatures. And again, if your list is not quite the same as mine, no big deal. It's just as long as you're understanding how an overview box is created and edited, that's kind of the point of the exercise.
So you can see the icon's a little different. That's like a little air handler if you were to be able to really zoom in. There's my name, inputs, and set points. My set points themselves have gears since they're changeable. And then I could make that overview box wider. So instead of one column of 8 labels, I can make 2 columns, each with 4 labels. So I click my overview box, drag from inside the right edge until it goes to 2 columns, and then drag up from the bottom border so it's not quite as tall. And then reposition somewhere on your graphic. Makes it fit nicely. Then we're ready to save. And then we can apply the thumbnail. Now that I've shown you how to make the thumbnail and why we do it, I think the fastest way to apply a thumbnail is first I like to save my graphic just to make sure the updates are saved into the database. And then if you click the preview button, then you can use your snip and sketch or snipping tool to capture that image. And then click the floppy icon to save. I'll save it on my desktop with the name of AHU.png. And then once I've saved it, I can back my way out, close snip and sketch, close the preview. And then to get to that upload thumbnail menu item, if I'm in the magic buttons menu on the right, just click back at the top of the right sidebar. That brings you back to the base graphics builder menu. Then you see the option underneath tools to upload thumbnail. And then you can choose a file. Mine is in my desktop named ahu.ping. It's open. Shows me the name of the file. Click apply. And so that way you don't have to go into the graphics app to capture the image. You can just use the preview button to capture the image. It's just, you'll find, I think that saves you a little bit of time. And so once you saved it, then you can pick either air handler on either floor in your nav bar, and then go to menu graphics. Then you should see your My AHU graphic and see it with the thumbnail that you uploaded. So this would be air handler 5. I can then go to the second floor and choose air handler 3, or my second floor air handler, click on it, and then I'll see the same graphic, but for that equip. And then you can kind of test your animations. We didn't really have any animations on the VAV equip. You can do one for the damper. We don't truly track damper position for pressure independent VAV control. We just open the damper until we reach that point and close the damper till, if it's too high, until we reach that point. For graphics purposes, sometimes people just look at the cooling requirement. I've heard of other people coming up with a percentage of like dividing the airflow input by the max airflow set point and using that as a percentage to drive the damper. So you can do damper animations for a VAV. I just didn't, because unless you buy our VAV controller that has a special actuator with feedback, we don't know the exact position. But I'll go to my first floor air handler since that's one that I programmed. And so both the heating outputs are on, so my heating coils are red. If you click on the gears for heating 2 and do manual off, it could be a forever override, meaning indefinite, or forever is no, then you can put in a timed override where it defaults to 1 hour and apply. So then you get the little purple border, which means that it's overridden, and I can see that the coil went off. Heating 1, manual off, apply. Then I can see its coil went off. Cooling 1 gears, manual on since it's currently off, apply. Then I should get a blue coil. And you can actually click on the coil itself to do overrides too, since there's that association. So if I click on this coil, I can just do manual on right there. apply.
Yeah, mine for some reason
So,
did something in the program because I have my cooling and heating are on at the same time.
yeah. So yeah, that's more of a programming thing. So I wouldn't worry too much about that since we're kind of focusing on the graphics side. But yeah, you certainly would want to investigate that. In automatic mode, they shouldn't be running.
It possibly have some. Well, no, because that's the cooling side of it. Because my economizer, I wasn't able to do that just because I got far behind and I wasn't going to interrupt.
Oh no, that's fine. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. I tend to do that if I'm not getting comments or questions. So it's important. We've got plenty of time.
No big deal.
Okay. So I just like to test all my animations. You know, the temperature sensors don't have animations, the duct sensors don't have animations, but the coils and the economizer and the fan do. So knowing that my spinning fan is associated with the fan output, if I either click on the fan or click on the gears for the smart label, I want to see that when the fan is off, the fan stopped spinning. It did. And notice that the dampers, that actually went and closed off then. And then if I click on the economizer and do a manual set, now since that's an analog point, it's not just on or off, but if I do a manual set to 100 and apply, then you can see that the economizer swings wide open. So all the animations look like they're opening and closing